For every person suicide directly affects, up to 100 persons or more are affected. More than an estimated 5,000 people a year die due to suicide. It is also estimated that 50,000 people a year have at least attempted. For every suicide that has a follow-through, 8 to 10 people that have survived their suicide lives at a price. Most become permanently debilitated in some way, such as succumbing to brain damage, paralysis, not to mention they have to suffer through excruciating chronic pain. Everyone has the right to die and to choose when and how they die, but this needs to be said. It is legally, morally, and ethically wrong for someone who is contemplating suicide to ask for assistance. The motivating factors to suicide is a deep and complex issue, and some factors are linked to depression, alcohol, drug abuse, and even some types of medication use has been known to cause suicide and depression. Dealing with life's challenges can be overwhelming, and finding and discovering coping skills and achieving goals can be very beneficial to the healing process. Everyone deals with life issues differently, this is certain, and everyone has the right to be believed and heard, as no one is beyond help. Talking is often therapeutic, and if one cannot find a person of trust, writing feelings on paper perhaps helps to release internalized emotions. Now, the subject of suicide is very controversial, and we are still no closer to finding the reasons behind suicide or a cure than when it first grabbed the attention of society. Whatever the reasons for suicide, I believe they are spiritual. And I do not doubt that what you will face in our current timeline of reality, this will be something that shakes you and your loved ones and your friends to the foundation of your core. Hello, my name is Shannon Gilmour, and I am a peer support mentor and a Christian women's life coach and an author, helping you to figure out life with biblical understanding. Today, I would like to address the issues of suicide and how you can talk about this issue with those whom you care about in a way that lays down all guilt and shame. The political stage has merged with the devil's playground of life, and those of you who are patriots have already made that earth-shattering shift to get in the know and leave the life that you once found comfort in all behind. Your friends and family, they perhaps have some catching up to do. The difference is that you and I, in our times of research, we had time to digest what we found out. We had time to sit on the information and investigate our thoughts. What we did find out and take into our hearts to believe as truth, even though it went against what we believed humanity should be, we were able to at least try to talk to our friends and family. And yes, at times they did turn us away. We found comfort in those who also did their research. We found a place where we could find comfort amongst a group of friends whom we could relate to. However, the times that we are now in today, those who are not yet in the know, they do not have time to deal with their struggle. They have to catch up or continue to be left behind. We are now in a time where we can no longer live with our heads buried in the sand. We have to think for ourselves, and for those who have chosen long ago to not upset the status quo and just live and let live, now is the time where their lives are going to cause them to question everything. They will either fight against it or continue to run from it. They may turn to you for answers, or they may not. I would like to share this video with you to help you look into the hidden underpinnings within their silence that may cause them to think about suicide. Your friends and family, once they learn of the things for themselves, as these things you also have learned, but you've learned them months and years ago. Again, you had time to deliberate and contemplate. But some of these things that are about to come into the public eye, they may cause you conflict as well. But your friends and family, they will turn to you for comfort and for help. They may also turn on themselves, and they may start to self-depreciate. They may devalue themselves, as they may question their reality and ask, how could I not see this? How was I able to turn a blind eye? Your loved ones may even suggest to themselves that if they were so easily led astray and they were so easily manipulated, that maybe they are the ones to blame. Well, we are all guilty for allowing the harms against humanity. But guess what? We didn't know. We were all manipulated in some way. Every single one of us, we were lulled into a dutiful slumber as we were forced to work our butts off for our families. The cost of living went up as our wages stayed low. The little that we could afford were necessities created with the famous clothing label to lead us to believe that we were in a position of affluence. We bought the techno gadgets, and we bought the music, the movies, and the games, and we did this all because we were told, in a way that forced us to believe that the wrongs of the world were not happening to us, and the wrongs of the world were presented in a way that seemed benign or agreeable, in a way that lulled our senses. We were forced to look here, not there, all because we expected our leaders to represent us. We expected our leaders to represent the good of all people. We never suspected or expected that those leaders would represent us only as long as it served them well to do so. However, we can rise above, as I believe that we are now in a time of a great revealing, or, as they say, a great awakening. And once our eyes are opened, we can open ourselves to healing. I do not doubt that we all were called to get in the know years before now. And I believe that our job is now to help bridge the gap towards healing. We are here to bridge the gap not only between our friends and family, but our nations, by helping to heal one another. Now, this is difficult and it isn't easy, but I'm hopeful that this video will give you some much needed information to help you when you are faced with the challenge of listening to the concerns of your friend and loved ones, so that you can help them work through their pain in a way that uproots the thoughts and feelings of depression and suicide. Now, no one likes to imagine that their friend or loved ones would ever entertain such a thing. Suicide is insidious, but please remember, it's not the workings of God. However, whatever you believe or do not believe about suicide or about God, when someone approaches you or you have suspicions that someone might be thinking about taking their own life, please lay down your judgments and assumptions on the matter. I'm speaking from experience, and perhaps I'll share that experience in another video. For now, I'd like to just say this. It is best to just listen with a listening ear and an open heart. I gave you some tips on how to listen in my last video entitled Peer Support. We're all in this together. In this video, I'd like to share some insights about suicide and how to help through effective communication. So what is suicide? It is thoughts of hopelessness that lead one to convincing thoughts of taking their life. How does it start? Well, I personally believe or suspect that suicide begins with a loss of hope. It takes hold of someone's mind and their heart as they begin to feel hopeless, as they feel as though they have no solution emotionally or even physically. Their fear stunts rational thoughts, and they cannot see their way out of their problematic situation clearly. Think of suicide in this way. If you fell into a deep hole and you had no way out of getting out of that hole, what would you do? You most likely would turn to thoughts and panic and grief. You would no doubt exercise the 5 stages of grief discussed in the previous video, and all rational thought would leave you. Many of you would just give up, sit down, and wait. Wait to either be rescued or wait to die. However, there is always a way out. It is through courage and perseverance. A belief in knowing that things will get better. You may not know how, but you believe it will. If you fell into a hole with this fundamental understanding that you leaned on in life, this is what you would take with you into that hole. Instead of turning to fear and doubt, you would get to work and try your best to think things through. What is the hole made out of? Is it a dirt hole? Is it brick? Is it lined with metal culvert tubing? What is the bottom of the hole like? Is it solid or rocky, or are you standing in a little bit of a puddle? All these questions that you can answer rationally with your eyes give you a better understanding of how to get yourself out of that hole. Those who go into the hole without a clear foundation of self-reliance and a firm grasp on a conviction of one's own abilities or even in God already, they may not fare well. If they have a will to live, they just may discover something about themselves that hole has brought to their attention. They may find conviction and faith within themselves inside that hole. For those who give up by giving in, they experience hopelessness on a level that we have never perceived before. They begin to empower those thoughts and emotions, and the stronger those emotions become, the more validated their thoughts are. This forms the foundation of truth, and it takes root in the heart. The heart and the mind begin to twist the individual's reality, trying to convince that person that life just isn't worth living, and they are not worthy to live in this world anyway. It's hopeless. What's the point? Now, these thoughts can be hidden in public. People put on masks and show of themselves only what they feel is acceptable in public. Here's a hint. Look into the eyes of those you love and whom you call friends. Look into their eyes when you're talking to them. Do not be afraid to make eye contact and see those signals that are tested and true. Are they smiling with their eyes? This is a truthful emotion that lets you know the individual is happy. They will smile using their full face, and their eyes will actually crease at the corners in genuine joy. Now, someone who is sad will lose the luster or sparkle in their eyes. Their facial expressions will be dull, and they will not be affected by the tone in your voice or the joyful moments around them. They will smile less often, and very rarely will you hear them laugh at something that should at least cause them to chuckle. Now, the statistics are grim, that every 40 seconds someone dies at their own hand, and every moment this statistic is worsening. So I'd like to share with you some warning signs that may help you know that someone might be willing to take their own life. Now, a word of caution. If you notice your friend or loved one expressing all or some of these traits, it might be a cause for alarm if these traits are out of their normal. It's better for you to just confront and ask than to second guess yourself and convince yourself that your friend or loved one would never harm themselves. The physical signs that someone is struggling with thoughts of suicide are a loss of appetite, or they may even show a weight gain, but most people show a loss of appetite, and so that follows through with weight loss. This is combined with sleep disturbances such as insomnia. They show a lack of interest in their hygiene or their appearance. Some people will show an interest in harming themselves. They may put cigarettes out on their hands, wrists, or their arms, and they may even pull out their hair. The emotional signs of suicide are as follows. They withdraw from their social ties. They hold unrealistic expectations about their performance or career. They feel hopelessness. They express anxiety as fear and worry. They have dramatic mood swings as they go from happy to sad and back again very quickly. The behavioral signs of suicide are also radical in nature. The individual may express an inability to concentrate. They may become impulsive and become irresponsible with money, their time. They may let go of healthy boundaries they once held for themselves. They may abuse alcohol and drugs, and they may become more promiscuous sexually. Some people even go the opposite direction and show a lack of interest. Now, these are all clues to depression in people who do not normally express these characteristics. Now, the feelings of suicide are not sudden. It takes time to develop, as depression is developed through situations that breed thoughts and feelings of anxiousness and anxiety that lead to hopelessness. So those who are contemplating suicide, they feel powerless to make positive changes in their lives. The feelings that a person who struggles with thoughts of suicide may not seem logical in your perspective. While you may believe that every cloud has a silver lining, minimizing their feelings is not effective in trying to help. Many people have often said to the hurting individual, "Someone always has it worse than you," or "things will get better as they always do," or "you have a lot going for you. You should count your blessings." While these may seem like the right things to say, they are counterproductive, as the individual cannot, and let me state this again, they literally cannot see life from your perspective. The territory of how life is mapped out for them exists in their heads, and it looks different than what your own map looks like. It's important to note that those struggling with suicide, they want to live, but they also want to die. Why? Because they cannot see that life will ever change for the better. They cannot see the good in life, even when you point it out to them. And if you are dealing with someone who has been ruled by cognitive dissonance, they literally will feel hopeless and do not know how to change. It's as if they are stuck. They have all this evidence that states that we have all been living a lie. We have all been living our lives while others have been hurting and have been used to promote the needs of others in a way that reveals extreme victimization. This merry-go-round in their head gives them no room for conflict resolution. So that's why you and I are here. We are here to listen. We are here to provide help where and when we can. You cannot force anyone to heal. You may find being a source of healing for someone extremely troubling, because at times it is. That's because at times the individual suffering from thoughts of suicide will become ambivalent, asking you for advice, but rejecting any sort of suggestions that you make. Even though you are there and you have proven that you are there for them time and time again, they still may feel like no one understands, including you. They may feel like you do not care, and they turn you away. They dismiss your kind gestures of affection and attention. This is not about you, so please do not take all this personally. Another important pointer to note is that oftentimes the person who is struggling with suicide will isolate themselves emotionally from people. This only increases their emotional belief that no one cares. If you can extend yourself, please do. Make a point to visit or bring dinner to their house. Spend time with them. Call them on the phone. They may not notice, but at least for that one day, you have helped to keep them alive just one more day. While you may experience a time when your friend or loved one seems to be getting better as their spirits seem lifted, it's important to take extreme caution. When a depressed person begins to cheer up, this is actually a very dangerous time for them. They may seem happier than they have ever been in a long while. Outside of finding healthy outlets that would normally uplift an individual, the time of someone who is struggling to cope with their depression, if they suddenly change and are happy without an outside routine, please take caution. Someone who is depressed will remain in isolation. They will not find ways to emotionally express themselves to build up their happy because they can't self-medicate in the way of finding healthy outlets to boost up their self-esteem. They will instead continue on in life as they had during the time of their depression because they're still depressed. The only marker for improvement will be that suddenly, one day, out of the blue, they express joy and happiness. This happiness is not through finding a new hobby, a new pet, or a new toy, or discovering a new relationship, or letting go of the pains that cause them torment. This happiness is because of a decision made. They have made a decision to solve their conflict on their own in a permanent way as they have made up their minds. That speaks finality. They are ready to commit suicide. So what can you do if you suspect someone you know and love is suicidal? Be direct. Ask them point blank, are you thinking of suicide? Or have you ever thought about or attempted suicide before? Encourage the individual to talk. If not to you, at least to someone that they trust. Encourage them to keep talking until somebody listens. If someone does divulge that they are suicidal, ask them more questions in a way that offers no judgment, but be honest in a way that helps to validate that what they are feeling and thinking is okay. They are normal, and it's not moronic for these thoughts and feelings to arise. You may even put their mind at ease by sharing a story if you have one, such as, you know, my uncle, when he was young, he tried to commit suicide. My family doesn't talk about it much, but I've often wondered what my uncle must have been feeling at the time. I love my uncle so much. He's so happy and joyful now, but I've always wanted to understand why he did that, but I've been too shy to ask. Or you may find a way to say, I can't imagine what you are going through. I would be willing to learn so that I can understand if ever you decide you want to talk about it. Ask the individual what resources that they might have available to them that may help ease the thoughts of suicide. Have you talked to anyone other than myself about this? Or you may ask, have you used methods such as journaling or music or self-help programs or an online group to help you cope? Ask the individual if they have in their possession, and this is a tricky question that you may not want to ask, but it's important that you do. Ask them if they have at home or on their person any means that would be used to take their life. You're not insulting them if you ask this. If they have acquired the means, ask them to remove these items out of the home. You can even ask them if they wouldn't mind giving them to you for safekeeping. Do you trust me enough to give these items to me for safekeeping? Remain in contact with the individual, especially if you've had conversations like this, because any distance that you keep between you and them, they might take that as a personal slight and judgment against them. And they might turn to feelings and thoughts of regret. Why did I ever bother opening my mouth? Sometimes the suicidal person is extremely depressed, and depression can be extremely negative. So I encourage you to remain in contact with the individual. Don't force yourself on them, but if they lose contact with you, make a point to contact them over the phone. Or as mentioned before, bring dinner over to their house and eat with them. Offer your time and company. This means more than you realize, even if they don't recognize it. Now, there is a term we use in peer support, and that term is called contracting. This is an important tool as you ask the individual to tell you in their own words that they will not harm themselves until either they talk with you again or someone else, such as a family doctor or a therapist. Ask them to say this phrase, I promise you. Individuals who make this verbal contract with you will usually follow through on their promise. Now, one final note is that a common misconception is that a suicidal person always leaves a note. The statistics state that only 25 to 30% do. Now, this information I have shared with you is for adults and for children. The behavioral difference between adults and children are slight. That's because children will express their depression in ways that can isolate them, yes, but some of them also act out in aggression. They have aggressive behavior towards the people that they love or even their beloved pets. Child may also develop a preoccupation with death, and they detach themselves from school and their friends. They may even begin to wear long shirts to cover up the marks they have made on their arms. These marks are self-harming marks, not necessarily marks from attempting to suicide. Some people even make marks on their legs to better hide these self-harming marks. These can be very painful. So keep an eye out of someone flinching at the touch of their arms or the dog brushing up against their legs. This might be a sign, but make note of this if it's out of character for your child. Let's remember that it just isn't the adults who are going to be negatively impacted by the information that is about to come out from our isolation and our social distancing. Children are going to have to come to terms with some deep, dark things about human nature that is extremely evil. This is the time where we can come together and unite ourselves to help heal one another. In this video, I shared with you some statistics to help you become more aware that suicide is a growing problem. I shared with you the physical, emotional, and behavioral warning signs of suicide. I shared with you how suicidal people may think and feel and how you can objectively help by not taking their dismissal of your compassion personal. I also shared with you some intervention techniques through asking questions and keeping the lines of communication open. I also shared with you an important method that aids in the prevention of suicide, forming a verbal contract with the individual. I hope I was able to help you understand suicide just a little bit better, as I'm hopeful that this video will give you some information to help you when your loved one or friend comes to you as they wrestle out the emotional dynamics of learning the truth of how our world was really run. I want to reiterate that you who call yourself a patriot, I'm proud of you. I am so thankful for you. I want this video to be a way to give back to you as a thank you from me, as you have provided such awesome information for myself and for others in your research that you have promoted on social media. When we were unable to spend the dedicated hours needed to discover the horrible truths, you were there. But your time is not yet over. Because you had to battle this alone, you are now equipped to help those who cannot battle on their own. God has called you. Never forget to whom you belong. You are my brother and my sister in arms, and I am so proud to be a part of this family. Thank you so very much. Everyone has the right to be heard, and everyone has the right to be believed. Everyone has the right to feel and express their feelings in a healthy way. I hope I have shared with you how you can help bridge the gap by learning how to recognize the signs of suicide and how you can aid in the emotional healing process by listening and asking questions of your own. Having an open dialogue with compassion and integrity serves to help heal us from the emotional wounds that have been left open to fester. We have been wounded by the enemy, but we can do better by being better. All it takes is one step at a time, because we are all in this together. Where we go one, we go all. My name is Shannon Gilmour. Thank you for listening. If you have questions, comments, or suggestions, or if you would like to pass my email along to someone who is dealing with thoughts of suicide, please feel free. If you would like to participate in my e-coaching course entitled My Brother, My Sister's Keeper, this is a 12-step guide to overcoming suicide through biblical understanding that is non-denominational. My email is srnityblu@gmail.com. There is so much more that needs to be said, so I'll say, see you at the next video. Much love to you, and thank you again. Blessings.